You know, usually when you have a problem with your house, like say the roof is leaking or the foundation is visibly cracking, there's a standard logical sequence of events.
Right, you call a contractor.
Yeah, exactly. You assess the structural damage and you fix the house.
Mhm.
You definitely don't look at a leaky roof and say, well, the living room is ruined. I guess the only logical response is to spend my entire life savings building a pressure-sealed dome at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
And just move there instead. Yeah.
Right. You don't just abandon the house for the trench.
Which would be a remarkably dramatic, resource-intensive way to avoid calling a plumber.
Completely.
I mean, you're trading a minor water leak for an environment where the ambient pressure wants to crush you every single second of the day.
But see, when you step into the world of modern tech billionaires and their visions for the future of humanity, that extreme Mariana Trench level escapism is exactly the logic we are presented with as, like, visionary.
Oh, absolutely. It's framed as the ultimate ambition.
Right. So today we are taking a deep dive into a highly provocative, really layered piece of writing from May 2026.
A fascinating time capsule.
Truly. It's a manifesto of sorts, written by an author named Paramendra Kumara Bhagat, and it's titled Netizen, the Flaw in Jeff's and Elon's Logic.
And it's a brilliant text because it operates on, well, multiple levels simultaneously. I mean, the author blends these massive macroeconomic predictions about artificial intelligence with a really biting philosophical critique of the current billionaire space race.
Which is a wild combination when you think about it.
It is. And furthermore, we aren't just looking at this one post in isolation today for you guys. We're analyzing it within the context of the author's incredibly expansive digital footprint.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There really is. It's an archive of tech blogs, project blueprints, philosophical frameworks going back decades. It paints a picture of a highly developed, very specific worldview.
But before we really get into the weeds here, we need to set some parameters for this discussion.
Definitely a good idea.
Yeah, because the source material contains some very strong opinions regarding specific public figures, namely Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. It tackles extreme wealth, global resource allocation, societal priorities, you name it.
Heavy topics.
Very. So, to you listening, we're acting strictly as impartial guides today. We're not here to take a side on the billionaire space race, nor are we making a political statement on wealth distribution.
Right. Our job is to stress test the author's logic.
Exactly. Unpack the analogies used and analyze the broader economic theories presented in this text. We are exploring the architecture of the argument, not necessarily buying the building.
And the architecture of this argument rests on a central contradiction that the author uses as a hook, which is, why are the smartest people on Earth, people possessing almost godlike technological power and immense capital, trying their absolute hardest to escape a planet equipped with oxygen, oceans, and a breathable atmosphere?
Just so they can relocate to a planet that is essentially a freezing, irradiated ball of rocks.
Exactly. It's a striking question.
It really is. So, to understand that critique, we first have to understand the author's baseline prediction for the future of Earth's economy. Because the author isn't just complaining about rockets.
No, not at all.
They are arguing that escaping Earth is fundamentally foolish because Earth is on the precipice of what they call the Age of Abundance.
And the text actually claims this impending era was prophesied in ancient scriptures thousands of years ago.
Blending ancient scripture with modern AI economics is a bold rhetorical move.
Very bold. But the author immediately grounds this prophecy in contemporary tech discourse, pointing out that Elon Musk himself agreed with this premise in a public post on that very day, May 20, 2026.
Wow.
Yeah, the text confidently states that Musk reached the same conclusion independently, so the author feels no need to, convince him of the premise.
Okay, let's unpack this premise
Yeah.
because it rests on a fundamental table flip in global economics. And it's driven entirely by artificial intelligence and robotics.
The great disruptors.
Yeah. The argument is that for all of recorded human history, we have existed within scarcity economics. I mean, the entire discipline of traditional economics is just the study of how to allocate scarce resources.
Right, supply and demand.
Exactly. But the author posits that AI and robotics are about to shatter that dynamic entirely. We are transitioning from scarcity to abundance.
Let's break down the mechanism of how that actually works for everyone listening, because it's not just magic. AI and robotics are inherently deflationary forces.
Deflationary, meaning they drive prices down.
Right. When you introduce technologies that can produce goods, write code, diagnose illnesses, and manage supply chains with immense, basically frictionless efficiency, The cost of producing those things plummets.
It just drops through the floor.
Exactly. We're talking about approaching a zero marginal cost society.
Which sounds a bit like the theories put forward by economists like Jeremy Rifkin, where the cost of producing one additional unit of a good or service approaches near zero. But the author takes this to a much more radical terminal velocity.
They really do.
They assert that as things cost less and less, eventually they will cost nothing. Like money and currency itself will lose all utility within 15 to 20 years.
That is the crux of the timeline. The author argues that it's not just that your groceries get cheaper, it's that the very concept of a medium of exchange evaporates.
It just vanishes.
Yeah, because the production of goods and services becomes so overwhelming that there is no longer a need to measure, restrict, or trade access to them.
Okay, I have to pause and push back on this, though. Let's think about this through a macroeconomic lens for a second. If the economy is a giant game of Monopoly,
I love this analogy.
right, so AI isn't just a new player. It's a machine that suddenly prints infinite hotels for every single property on the board simultaneously.
He ends them out.
Yes.
Ugh.
So sure, colorful paper money becomes irrelevant because everything is free.
Yeah.
But how does the author envision this transition happening without the global economy utterly collapsing in a panic tomorrow?
That's the million-dollar question, or, well, the $0 question.
Huh. Right. Because if you tell global markets that fiat currency is going to be fundamentally worthless in 2 decades, you don't get a smooth transition. You get a catastrophic run on banks and the collapse of credit markets.
It's a very valid challenge. If you view money purely as a store of value, a countdown clock to zero creates pure panic.
Absolute chaos.
But what's fascinating here is that the author doesn't envision a sudden apocalyptic disappearance of money. The text explicitly states, and I quote, "It will not be a dramatic sudden disappearance of money. It will be gradual."
So, like a slow bleed.
Exactly. They see it as a slow bleed of costs. Before money disappears, essential goods simply become cheaper and cheaper until the friction of paying for them exceeds the cost of the good itself.
Oh, I see. Like how we no longer pay per minute for long-distance phone calls or per text message.
That is the perfect example.
The infrastructure became so efficient that metering the usage just became pointless.
Exactly, the mechanism. But scale that up to housing, food production, energy. Think about the psychological paradigm shift for you as a consumer.
It's massive.
If you are operating under the assumption that the concept of currency is on a 20-year countdown clock to total obsolescence, hoarding cash becomes an exercise in utter absurdity.
Which brings us directly to the people who are currently the best in the world at hoarding that asset.
The billionaires.
Right. If money is going to zero, what happens to the multi-billionaires? The author specifically targets Jeff Bezos, citing a net worth of $200 billion, and Elon Musk at $800 billion in this 2026 context.
Astronomical numbers.
Unfathomable. And the author offers them a fascinating thought experiment. They call it the $10 billion allowance.
And the author frames this from a libertarian-leaning perspective, which is interesting. They say, let the billionaires decide how much they want to consume.
Sure, but let them buy what they want.
Right, but keeping in mind that money will be useless in 20 years, how much cash do they actually need to physically consume everything they could possibly want for the rest of their lives and their children's lives?
And their grandchildren?
Well, the author notes we don't even need to factor in the grandchildren because money won't exist by then anyway.
That is such a wild premise. The text reads almost comically here. They write, looks like you already have a house and a car and a plane. So we're looking at food, fuel.
It's so dismissive of extreme wealth.
It is. They suggest $10 billion is more than enough. They are highlighting the physical impossibility of a single human being actually consuming $200 billion worth of physical goods before the money supply itself becomes obsolete.
But here is where we need to look at the mechanics of extreme wealth, because the author makes a crucial distinction. They separate wealth from power.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, the author anticipates the obvious counter-argument. Billionaires don't just have vaults of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck.
Right, it's not a swimming pool of cash.
Exactly. Their wealth is tied up in the stock of the companies they run. They need those shares to maintain control of their massive logistical and technological empires.
Right, Elon's wealth isn't sitting in a checking account. It's equity in Tesla and SpaceX. If he liquidates it, he loses the companies.
And the author totally acknowledges this. The text clarifies that running companies requires power, but power comes from voting rights, not from the monetary value of the hoarded asset.
So what's the solution?
The author proposes a structural mechanism: split the shares. Give the founders the voting shares so they retain the operational power to run their companies. Decouple that operational power from the financial asset itself.
Okay, let me test that theory. Even if you decouple voting rights from the economic value of the shares, if a billionaire suddenly liquidates $190 billion worth of Amazon stock, the market price of that stock plummets,
It tanks, absolutely.
which impacts the retirement accounts of millions of regular people.
Hmm.
You can't just magically extract that liquidity without massive market distortion.
Well, the author is somewhat bypassing traditional market mechanics here to make a broader philosophical point about resource allocation.
Fair enough.
They are arguing that the hoarding of the monetary value serves no operational purpose for the company or the founder. So if you accept the premise and you give them their $10 billion lifelong allowance, the author has a very actionable demand for the remaining billions.
And what is that demand?
They say, the money goes to end poverty now.
Wow. Let's dig into that because the author has a very specific utilitarian definition of poverty. They write, poverty is a lack of cash.
It's a very blunt assessment.
It really is. It strips away all the sociological, structural, and moral complexities we usually attach to poverty and just reduces it to a raw math problem.
It's an incredibly bold reduction, and the solution they propose relies on leveraging existing, highly efficient digital infrastructure. They point directly to India's Aadhaar and UPI systems as the functional blueprint.
We should probably explain how those systems actually work so you listening can make sense of this.
Yeah.
Aadhaar isn't just a database, it's a biometric identification system.
Right. Massive scale.
Yeah, it gives over 1 billion people a unique 12-digit identity linked to their fingerprints and iris scans.
It's fascinating technology.
It is. And UPI, the Unified Payments Interface, is a real-time payment system that links those identities directly to bank accounts and mobile wallets.
The crucial element here is the removal of friction and intermediaries. Historically, if you wanted to distribute billions of dollars to the poorest people on Earth, you had to route it through governments, NGOs, local bureaucracies.
And a lot gets lost along the way.
Exactly. The author notes that this traditional route is plagued by leakage, corruption, administrative costs, logistical failures.
The overhead is huge.
But by utilizing a globalized version of Aadhaar and UPI, the author argues you can execute direct cash transfers directly to the biometrically verified individual with zero leakage.
I see the technological logic, definitely. But is poverty really just a lack of cash?
That's the counter-argument, isn't it?
Yeah, because what about infrastructure deficits? If you instantly wire $1,000 to a remote village using a biometric ID, but that village has no roads to bring in food, or, the local warlord controls the water supply, the digital cash doesn't solve the physical scarcity. The supply chains have to exist for the money to be useful.
The author's counter to that would likely tie back to the overarching premise: we are entering an age of abundance, where AI and automated logistics, which the author later calls the logistics cloud, are actively solving those supply chain bottlenecks.
Oh, I see. So they view it as a solved problem, essentially.
Essentially, yes. The author's point is that we have crossed a technological threshold. The continuation of poverty is no longer a resource production problem. It is purely a capital allocation problem, maintained by people hoarding a medium of exchange that is destined for obsolescence anyway.
It's a powerful framing.
It really is. The text boldly declares, poverty has already become unnecessary.
That brings us to the two archetypes the author creates out of this tension. I love this part. They talk about the BHB, the black hole billionaire, versus the RB, the radiant billionaire.
It's a great visual.
Right. The black hole billionaire allows their wealth to just sit there, sucking in resources, emitting nothing of value to the broader system.
Just an infinite gravity well of capital.
Yes. Versus the radiant billionaire, who takes their $10 billion, lives a life of unimaginable luxury, retains their corporate voting power to build cool technology, but radiates the vast remainder of their wealth outward through direct digital transfers.
They become the mechanism that makes poverty obsolete.
Exactly. But when we look at the real world, it's glaringly obvious that billionaires are decidedly not taking the radiant billionaire path.
Definitely not.
They aren't liquidating their fortunes to build a utopian abundance economy via direct cash transfers. So where's that capital going?
Up, literally up.
Right into orbit, which pivots us directly into the author's incredibly scathing critique of the multiplanetary agenda.
And this is where the author really pulls no punches. They look at the massive push by Bezos and Musk to colonize space and frame it not as a heroic endeavor, but as an astronomically expensive avoidance mechanism.
Avoidance, yeah.
They note the justifications frequently cited by these founders: climate change, asteroid impacts, resource depletion, the fragility of a single planet civilization.
Usual talking points.
Exactly. The prevailing Silicon Valley narrative is that humanity must become a multiplanetary species to survive.
But the author strips away all that grand civilizational rhetoric and boils their logic down to a single, highly cynical sentence. They say, things are getting messy here, let's move.
It's so dismissive, but it hits hard.
It really does. They call the entire space race the most expensive midlife crisis in human history. And my absolute favorite line in the text is, normal billionaires buy yachts. Tech billionaires buy rockets because Earth has traffic.
It's brilliant. It captures the absurdity of looking at a systemic problem like traffic, pollution, climate, and instead of fixing the system you control, you just buy a vehicle capable of escaping it.
To highlight how structurally flawed this logic is, the author provides a phenomenal analogy. I want you to picture this. They say that responding to a fragile Earth by attempting to colonize Mars is akin to having a leaking kitchen sink. And your chosen solution is to launch a submarine program.
It's so vivid.
It really paints a picture. If your kitchen sink is leaking, the environment in your house is slowly becoming hostile. The floor is rotting, there's mold, but building a submarine doesn't fix the house.
No, not at all.
It is merely a vastly more complicated, technologically difficult way to survive inside a wet room.
Exactly. The author is pointing out a massive blind spot here. Silicon Valley speaks about Mars with the glossy enthusiasm of real estate developers pitching luxury condos.
Oh, totally. Selling the dream.
Right, but entirely glossing over the fact that Mars is a barren rock without a magnetosphere, without breathable air, and with soil that is literally toxic to terrestrial plant life.
Small details, right?
Yeah, minor inconveniences. The author calls it the greatest marketing achievement of the 21st century, successfully convincing highly intelligent people that a dead rock is a logical backup plan for a planet custom-built for human biology.
The text really leans into this planetary comparison. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like comparing a 5-star all-inclusive resort to a gravel driveway.
That's pretty accurate.
The author points out that Earth offers premium features completely free of charge. Atmosphere, gravity, food, birds, breathable oxygen, and tacos.
Forget the tacos.
Never forget the tacos.
Yeah.
But Mars has rocks. That is the entire feature set.
Rocks and dust.
And yet, the author notes, billionaires are spending unimaginable sums, like $28 million, to be brutally fired into the upper atmosphere as space tourists, just to come back down and have an epiphany that Earth is actually quite nice.
It's a devastating takedown of the space tourism industry. The author draws a really sharp contrast between historical astronauts, professionals who spent decades training and risking their lives to advance human scientific understanding, and today's billionaire space tourists.
Totally different vibe now.
Well, completely. Today, it's about treating the cosmos like an exclusive ski resort in Aspen. You pay $28 million to look out a window and purchase an epiphany.
Let me play devil's advocate for a moment, though.
Go for it.
The author dismisses the space race as purely escapism. But historically, pushing the boundaries of space travel forces massive breakthroughs in material science, computing, and logistics that directly benefit Earth.
Like spin-off technologies.
Exactly. The Apollo program gave us advancements in water purification, GPS, medical imaging. Even today, SpaceX driving down the cost of orbital launches enables global satellite internet, which could actually help power the Aadhaar and UPI digital infrastructure the author wants to use to end poverty.
That's a great point.
Right. Doesn't the ambition of Mars force the creation of the exact tools needed to fix Earth?
That is the standard defense of the aerospace industry, and look, it's a strong one. But the author's critique is focused on the intent and the allocation of focus. The author's thesis is shockingly simple. They write, if you possess the engineering talent, capital, and organizational power required to colonize another planet, you probably also possess the ability to fix many problems on this one.
So if you can solve the mind-bending logistics of terraforming a freezing rock millions of miles away, you can definitely figure out how to efficiently distribute food and water on a planet where water literally falls from the sky and food grows out of the dirt.
Precisely. The author is arguing against the indirect route. Why spend $1 trillion to develop a water purification system for a Mars habitat so that the technology might eventually trickle down to a village on Earth when you could just deploy a fraction of that capital and engineering talent to build the water system in the village today?
That makes a lot of sense. And the author illustrates this with these wonderfully absurd hypotheticals.
I love these.
Imagine a team of firefighters arriving at a blazing house, looking at the flames, and announcing to the family, "We've decided to build a second house on the moon."
It's hilarious.
Or doctors looking at a patient with a severe illness and suggesting, "Curing disease is quite difficult. Have you considered relocating to Neptune?"
It just perfectly highlights the disconnect between technological capability and practical terrestrial application. Mars colonization discourse constantly skips over the lethal minutia.
The fine print of living on Mars.
Yeah. We aren't just talking about a lack of oxygen. We are talking about cosmic radiation that shreds human DNA. We are talking about perchlorates in the soil. We are talking about average temperatures cold enough to insult Antarctica.
And this reveals a much deeper systemic rot in how modern venture capital and tech culture value innovation. The author draws a stark contrast between what they call cinematic technology and boring competence.
This might be the most vital sociological observation in the entire text.
I agree. Let's break it down.
So, cinematic technology refers to projects that look good on a screen. Silicon Valley, the author argues, has become a culture addicted to visual spectacle. If an idea cannot be distilled into a slick, high-definition Netflix documentary narrated by a compelling actor, the capital markets lose interest.
It's all about the pitch. Think about the marketing of these ventures. The slow-motion rocket launches with epic, Hans Zimmer-style orchestral music in the background. Founders standing on stages dramatically backlit, gazing heroically into the future like Roman emperors who just discovered machine learning.
It's highly performative.
Very performative. But a massive rocket lifting off the pad is visually undeniable. An app that lets digital avatars trade crypto tokens generates immediate visual engagement. But what happens when someone pitches a company trying to optimize urban waste management or reduce infant mortality rates?
The response is usually a polite nod followed by, interesting, but where's the viral growth loop? What is the daily active user metric?
Right, how do we monetize the sewage?
Exactly. The author is championing the unsung heroes of human progress here. A biochemist quietly mapping protein-folding pathways in a sterile lab doesn't generate dramatic drone footage.
Sadly not.
There is no visceral cinematic thrill to a team of engineers restructuring a municipal power grid. As the author notes, nobody is making movie trailers for incremental improvements in supply chain logistics. You can't end a TED Talk with a dramatic pause, stare into the camera and whisper, and then we optimized hospital procurement systems.
The author's entire point is that this boring work is the only thing that actually keeps civilization from collapsing.
It's the foundation of everything.
Civilization does not advance through spectacle. It advances through boring competence. A working sewage system is boring. The electrical grid is boring. Vaccines are boring. Until they fail.
That's the kicker.
When the power goes out or a pandemic hits, suddenly everyone realizes that the boring things are the only things that truly matter.
The author makes a really compelling historical parallel here, too. They look back at the titans of the Industrial Revolution, figures like Andrew Carnegie.
Okay, Carnegie.
Now, Carnegie was a ruthless industrialist, but when he looked at his vast, unprecedented wealth, his legacy project was building thousands of public libraries.
He funded libraries all over the place?
Everywhere. He built infrastructure designed to elevate the baseline of the population on Earth. When modern tech billionaires look at their wealth, their legacy projects are apocalypse contingency plans.
Wow, that is a stark contrast. The text even floats the idea that maybe this is just the inevitable cynical evolution of capitalism. Stage 1, we build the physical railroads. Stage 2, we build the digital software. Stage 3, we abandon the planet entirely.
Just pack it up and leave?
But the author refuses to concede Earth to that fate. They remind the reader of everything we stand to lose. Earth contains music, deep oceans, friendships, comedy, art, history, and, as the author specifically calls out, the rare miracle of pizza arriving in under 30 minutes.
Truly a miracle.
Mars has none of this. As the text bluntly points out, Mars doesn't even have Wi-Fi.
Which brings us to the ultimate staggering irony of this entire escape plan philosophy.
The compute contradiction.
Yes. The same visionaries who are constantly warning humanity that Earth's environment is incredibly fragile and that we must leave to survive are concurrently building companies that consume historic, unprecedented amounts of energy and planetary resources.
Let's unpack the compute contradiction because it's wild. The author points out that right now there are entire physical mountains of GPUs, immense server farms, just humming endlessly, drawing massive amounts of electricity off the grid.
They require millions of gallons of water just for cooling alone.
And what are we using this godlike computational power for? We aren't using it to solve the climate crisis. We aren't using it to redesign the electrical grid.
The author states it beautifully and tragically. They say, humanity finally achieved godlike computational power and immediately used it to create synthetic podcast clips.
It's a brutal observation, honestly. We have the computational tools required to map human biology, to unravel the mysteries of disease, to model perfect aerodynamic efficiency. But a massive fraction of that power is diverted toward generating digital spectacle.
It's a misallocation of resources.
Totally. We use it so AI can generate deep fake videos, optimize hyper-targeted advertising algorithms, and allow people to argue with strangers online more efficiently.
The mismatch between our capability and our application is just staggering. The scientists doing the actual boring work on advanced material science and sustainable energy receive a fraction of the attention and a fraction of the capital, compared to platforms designed to harvest human attention.
So if the billionaire space race is a cinematic distraction, who does the author believe the future actually belongs to?
The text has a very clear vision on this.
Yeah, the future belongs to the problem solvers. Not the rocket billionaire looking for an exit strategy, but the engineer improving global food systems. The person actively reducing suffering here on Earth, rather than merely plotting the logistics of relocating human suffering to a barren, freezing planet.
To solidify this, the author uses a gaming analogy that perfectly encapsulates the absurdity of the Mars ambition.
Oh, I love the gaming analogy.
It's so relatable. They argue that Earth is the baseline tutorial level of civilization. It comes pre-installed with oceans, a magnetic field to block radiation, and breathable oxygen.
Easy mode.
Exactly. If humanity cannot successfully manage the tutorial level, our confidence about managing Mars is dangerously, almost comically premature. The text simply states, Mars is not easier Earth. Mars is expert mode.
If we are actively failing the tutorial level, like we can't figure out how to equitably distribute water on a planet whose surface is 71% water, what makes us arrogant enough to think we can jump straight to the hardest difficulty setting in the solar system?
Where the environment is actively trying to kill us every single second.
Right, and manufacture a water cycle from scratch. It's absurd.
Now, to fully grasp the scale of what this author is proposing, we have to pull the camera back a bit. If you look at the sidebar of this blog, you realize that this critique of Musk and Bezos isn't just an isolated rant.
No, it's part of something much bigger.
It is one small piece of a vast metaverse of content created by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat.
It is genuinely overwhelming when you look at the bibliography. We are looking at an entire library of future visions. The source material lists an astonishing array of books, concepts, and technical blueprints the author has published over decades.
It's a lifetime of work.
Yeah, titles like Physical AWS, The Logistics Cloud, Himalayan Compute, Agentic AI, and Precigenetics.
Let's actually define some of these for the listener, because it shows the author isn't just a critic. They are an architect of alternative systems. Take Physical AWS, for example.
Okay, let's break that down.
Amazon Web Services revolutionized the internet by abstracting the server farm. You no longer had to build a server room to start a company. You just rented compute power in the cloud.
Right, it made starting a tech company way easier.
Exactly. The author is proposing physical AWS abstracting physical global logistics. The vision is a world where moving a physical good across the planet is as frictionless and automated as sending a data packet across the internet, utilizing autonomous drones, automated warehousing, and API-driven freight.
That's incredible. And then there's Precigenetics, which seems to combine precision medicine with advanced genetic modeling.
It's cutting-edge stuff.
The author isn't just talking about basic CRISPR gene editing. They're outlining a future where the godlike compute we discussed earlier is applied to predictive, high-resolution modeling of cellular behavior.
Mapping the human body like software.
Exactly. As the title suggests, it's technology that lets us watch life think at the molecular level, moving healthcare from reactive treatments to proactive, genetic-level disease prevention.
When you look at these blueprints, Earth-to-Earth rocketry, combined with Hyperloop systems, smart surface transit, reorganized United Nations structures, you realize the author is actively trying to engineer the boring competence they champion.
They are actually doing the work.
They are providing the technical schematics for the age of abundance. But the most fascinating element of this entire metaverse is a concept the author returns to repeatedly, which is calciism.
Right. Calciism, the economic and spiritual blueprint for an age of abundance.
It's a deep concept.
Very deep. Kalki is a figure from Hindu eschatology, the final avatar of Vishnu, prophesied to appear at the end of the current age of darkness, the Kali Yuga.
To destroy corruption and usher in a new era of truth and abundance.
Right. But how does the author reconcile ancient Hindu prophecy with quantum computing and Aadhaar payment networks?
It is a remarkable synthesis. The author doesn't use calciism as a purely religious or mystical dogma. They use it as a philosophical framework to manage the extreme disruption of the technological singularity.
A way to anchor us.
Exactly. If AI and robotics are going to destroy the concept of money and overturn all existing economic structures, humanity needs a framework to handle that transition without tearing itself apart. Calciism, in the author's writings, represents the integration of hyper-advanced technology with a spiritual commitment to equity.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about how we use it.
It's the idea that true technological enlightenment isn't escaping to Mars, it's using AI to manifest the prophesied age of abundance right here on Earth.
So when we look at this massive body of work, thousands of blog posts dating back to 2005, blending supply chain logistics, AI predictions, and ancient spirituality, how do we even categorize this thinker? Is this science fiction? Is it avant-garde economic theory?
I think we have to view the author as the ultimate Earth optimist.
An Earth optimist. I like that.
They represent a profound, highly structured counter-narrative to Silicon Valley's prevailing doom and escape mentality. While the billionaire class looks at the future and sees unavoidable civilizational collapse requiring a multiplanetary escape hatch, this author looks at the exact same technological capabilities and sees the tools to build a utopia.
They see a completely different outcome.
Through agentic AI, precigenetics, and global digital infrastructure, they believe we can achieve a grand Solara vision here on Earth. They are demanding that we stay and fix the house.
Let's pull all these threads together because it has been an incredibly dense journey through this text. We started with the radical economic premise that the deflationary power of AI and robotics is on a 20-year trajectory to making money entirely obsolete.
A massive paradigm shift.
Huge. And we explored the libertarian thought experiment, proposing that billionaires accept a $10 billion lifetime allowance, retain their corporate voting power, and leverage instantaneous zero-leakage digital systems like Aadhaar and UPI to eradicate global poverty.
From there, we examined the author's blistering critique of the space race, exposing it as an absurd cinematic distraction.
The ultimate escapism.
We saw how colonizing Mars is akin to building a submarine to fix a leaky sink, trading the premium, taco-rich features of Earth for a barren, freezing rock. We analyzed the cultural rot of prioritizing visual spectacle over the boring competence of vaccines, water grids, and hospital procurement.
And we uncovered the systemic contradiction of utilizing historic amounts of energy and godlike computational power to generate synthetic podcast clips, rather than applying that massive compute to solve fundamental human problems.
It's all connected.
All of this is housed within the author's broader intellectual architecture of calcism, demanding that we merge our highest technological capabilities with a commitment to planetary abundance.
The author forces us to confront the reality of our current trajectory. Escaping to Mars is not a visionary solution, it is a profound abdication of responsibility.
Running away from the problem.
Exactly. The future must belong to those who apply their intelligence to reducing suffering on the planet we already inhabit.
Which leaves us with a final, very provocative thought for you to ponder. We've talked extensively about AI, compute power, and the author's gaming metaphor that Earth is the baseline tutorial and Mars is expert mode.
Right, the difficulty settings.
If we follow the author's logic, AI is the driving force that will soon create this deflationary age of abundance. But what happens when the very AI systems we are building on Earth, utilizing those massive mountains of humming GPUs, finally reach their full potential?
When they truly wake up.
What happens if the AI analyzes our global data, evaluates our resource allocation, and realizes that we are the ones failing the tutorial?
That's a chilling thought.
If AI eventually possesses the intelligence to manifest the age of abundance, will it view the billionaire's desire to leave Earth as a heroic pursuit of civilizational survival? Or will the AI evaluate the undeniable logic of the situation, look at the oxygen, the oceans, and the forests, and conclude that the multiplanetary escape plan was simply the ultimate, cowardly refusal of humanity to stay and clean up its own mess.
It really reframes the whole endeavor.
It certainly makes you wonder, where can you apply a little more boring competence in your own life today instead of looking for an escape hatch?